What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. Some interesting news on the Netflix adaptation of the Witcher series. Now, many of you, if you're like me, are more familiar with the Witcher series because of the CD Projekt Red video game, The Witcher 3. But you also loosely know, or at least somewhat know, that the series itself is based on books. The audience for the books is not small by any means, but I think modern day what really popularized the Witcher series is the game. Now, media is already out there saying some questionable things, and we're going to take a look at that, some particularly interesting things, as well as an interaction between Angry Joe himself and the showrunner for the Witcher TV series, Lauren Hissrich. I think this is shaping up to be another Star Wars Last Jedi type situation. And if we look at Paul Tassi, who wrote this article a full year ago, just about a year ago today, I think he was right. He said, "I'm worried Netflix's The Witcher show is shaping up to be the next ugly incident." Now, he's going to use journal language, but ultimately, I think what happens is a lot of times media, not just in video games, but they profit off division. They profit off dividing people. We see a lot of outrage and things like that, fake mostly. But if we look at, for example, a movie like The Last Jedi, a forgettable movie, a 5 out of 10. I've seen a lot of forgettable movies in my day. It's particularly egregious that it happens to be in the Star Wars franchise. But all of the media I can remember about, regardless of what fictitious side you were on, was basically about how the movie was bad and it was the fandom's fault. The ratings for the movie, it was the fans. It was these angry male neckbeards in their basements that were ruining everything for everybody. The movie itself took no responsibility for being aggressively average. The actors and actresses themselves took no responsibility for being forgettable, and all we have are the Rose Tico memes to remember it by. But that didn't stop the media from basically writing endless articles about, toxic fandoms and all this type of things. And the Witcher TV series has an absolute ripe situation for that. He writes, "I can feel it in my bones, a storm's brewing on the horizon." It's about Netflix's upcoming Witcher TV series, an adaptation of Andrzej Sapkowski's original books, which were adapted into CD Projekt Red's games, most recently the much-beloved Witcher 3. And ultimately, what kind of spun all this off was when the Witcher showrunner did confirm that they will not adapt the games in future. They will not adapt the show to fit the games. Lauren Hissrich, showrunner of Netflix adaptation for the Witcher novels, notice how everyone's referring it to that. Up until last week, everyone was just saying Netflix is the Witcher series. Now it's all like, oh, well, it's the novels. Recently took part in a roundtable in the press and part of Comic-Con. A reporter for The Wrap took the opportunity to ask whether the series was likely to go beyond the novels and into the territory covered by CD Projekt Red's games, which are set after them at any point. She said, "Extreme long vision is no. We will not start adapting the games," Hissrich replied. "I can only go after one season at a time. I'm so excited for this one. The rest kind of makes my mind hurt right now. If anyone says what happens in season 7, sure, I have thoughts. Fingers crossed we get there." I guess that's a no on the unicorn scene. And this comes after, of course, an interview given by Lauren saying that the show itself will absolutely not be following the video game series, but instead be focusing on the books. See, here's the interesting thing with expectations. If they had come out from Jump Street, which, by the way, they always knew they weren't going to cover the video game, right? So when Netflix agreed to do the show, they didn't agree to do the show based on the video game. They've always agreed that they knew it was going to be about the books, but they purposely held that information from the gaming community so that we would help perpetuate buzz for the show. So you don't get to now come back and complain that people are mad about it. They can either watch it or don't watch it, and many of them might jump in their canoes and paddle out into deeper waters and get a hold of the show, which I obviously disavow, but you don't get to pretend that you don't know why people might feel a little betrayed, which of course brings me to Angry Joe, rightfully, in my opinion, pointing out the following back a few days ago. The Witcher showrunner says Netflix series will never adapt the video games, even if it gets past all the book material. Me, weird flex, but okay. It's almost as if he's pretending the video games didn't popularize the franchise, so whatever, I don't really get it. To which the showrunner replies, she. Pretty epic comeback, and fair enough. Obviously, Joe is just reading a quote. It's not like he knows who makes every show, so it's, you know, it's not really an egregious error. So which he replies, she, sorry about that, my mistake. Did I hear about a bathtub scene? So hopefully we get a small bit of love. But now that I've got your attention, can I politely ask for you to change the ballsack armor for season 2? In all seriousness, can't wait for the show. Lauren then answers, since we've all got each other's attention now, it's funny to me that adapting the books has become code for hating the games. Again, I don't think it has. Maybe a few obscure people out there have said this. I don't view it that way. If anything, I view it as Netflix purposely taking advantage of something they had no intention of ever using. And if they had just come out up front and said, hey, it's a Netflix show on The Witcher based on the books. If you liked the video games, you'll probably like this. Wouldn't that have been a better way to market this? It's like they don't understand the gaming community at all. Because had they marketed it in this fashion up front, then I think gamers would have been, in general, excited about it, to learn more about the books. So many people read the books after, of course, playing the game. She goes on to say, I love the games. I am bad at them, admittedly, but I enjoy drinking beer and watching my friends play. Okay, fine. Nothing wrong with that. The bottom line is CD Projekt Red recognized amazing source material in Sapkowski's books, and I chose to adapt it. I'm going to do the same thing. I've sat with the team in Warsaw. We have a mutual respect. Can't everyone arguing on our behalf get along too? Again, I think that, you know, Lauren here misunderstands why people might be annoyed, right? Going on to say, here, I just read in an article that Hisrich recently emerged onto social media like a bad case of the derp during a blind date. The rest of it was a dumpster fire. I have to give the author props for an imaginative metaphor. I'm totally stealing it. You guys are sweet and kind of protective. As you know, I got onto Twitter to have a dialogue with all fans, not just my supporters. I plan on keeping that deal as long as I keep making this amazing show. Also, stealing that. I mean, I think that Hisrich does have a history of some kind of inflammatory tweets. She's obviously, you know, of a certain political leaning. She tweets about stuff like that all the time. But that's her right. I think you don't want to get into the situation where you're pushing against the fandom. When the show was initially announced, you know, she got into it with fans and then had to kind of retreat from social media. And that's frustrating. But at the same time, it's not all her fault, but some of it is. Here's a perfect example. This article was published 2 days ago, quietly. The Witcher Netflix series brings magic and feminism into fantasy. Creator Lauren Hisrich and stars Anya and Freya, we'll just say, talk bringing The Witcher series to life as the next big fantasy series. Lauren Hisrich was about to step on a plane when she discovered The Witcher had gotten the green light from Netflix. A writer and producer, like it was ever not going to. A writer and producer with credits that include Daredevil and the Umbrella Academy, Hisrich had successfully pitched a fresh take of Netflix for adapting Andrzej Sapkowski's beloved fantasy novels for the small screen, but still didn't know for sure if she had a show until boarding an aircraft heading to Poland. There she would be in Sapkowski's homeland, as well as from which his popular books and video games are also inspired. It began there. The first steps to building the next big fantasy series would begin. a good story, right? A normally, you know, decent coverage. But this is a perfect example of a topic that is not relevant to the show in any way, kind of getting shoehorned into an article. And we're talking about a long article, I don't know, a couple thousand words, right? A couple thousand words, all about The Witcher. Lauren Hisrich, you know, she's talked about how The Witcher show came into being. But then the headline is, it brings magic and feminism to fantasy. All the way, you have to go all the way to the bottom of this article to get any mention of that. As for the future, that will be determined by how The Witcher is received when it lands on Netflix later this year. Everyone involved, though, is eager to expand on the story and find out what monsters lie ahead. Alan even has a challenge for her former Superman co-star, should The Witcher be renewed. I'm so excited. I love the idea of doing training and things like that. I'd be very competitive with Henry as well. Okay, great. Let's go to this paragraph. This is it. 2 sentences. But it is a quote from the showrunner, okay? The exact quote. I always like to say that The Witcher is its own complete thing, but truthfully, Game of Thrones opened a door at least, Hisrich considers. For me, I told the panel that I was not a fantasy writer. I couldn't have called myself one, but the truth is good fantasy relates to real life. It's not about fantasy at all. It's about what's happening in a real and grounded way. It's about family and monsters, what we get to bring to it. It's magical, and yet the horror can be fairly grounded too. She adds, quote, I think it's impossible to write fantasy without relating the current real world to it. She's wrong. She's wrong. But anyway, that's her quote. The good news is that these books are incredibly political. They deal with racism and things like xenophobia, and they deal with feminism. Wow. So it's interesting that you say it's good news. Good news! I get to be political with my show. This is not what people want. This isn't what they want to hear. And if the show focuses on that significantly, it's going to be met with bad reviews. I think people are extraordinarily sensitive to this type of thing in modern day media because, you know, we're kind of pulpited, we're preached at by all modern day cinema and all these Hollywood actors and actresses that we don't really care about. You know, the Netflix adaptation meme is a meme for real. And as I've seen, you can see just up in the corner up there, my copy of Witcher 3. Where is it? This way. I've just recently started playing the game. I'm definitely enthralled with the story already, and I have so much more to get into. And if Netflix had pitched The Witcher 3 The Witcher TV show as upfront about the Witcher books, I would have been just as excited. I think it was greedy of them, purposely misleading to pander to the gaming community and the people that love the Witcher 3 show, and they purposely withheld information that it had nothing to do with the books. Lauren, as Hisrich, unless this was her decision, is receiving unfair criticism because it sounds like she had always planned on pitching the books. Now, if she's the one that purposely held that information, well, now we have a problem. And I agree with Joe. You know, you can't deny the games making the Witcher series as popular as it is today. You cannot deny the hard work and that CD Projekt Red put into the Witcher series, in particular The Witcher 3. But if the show is about what she says it is, I can expect Paul Tassi to be 100% right, and a slew of media articles the week the show comes out about how if it wasn't great, it's because of the fans, and it's just our fault for everything. I hope you enjoyed this video. I genuinely am still cautiously optimistic for the Witcher series. I'm curious what you have to say in the comment section down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.